What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 321.
Otherwise known as 3-2-1 blast off.
One. Yeah, blast off. That's what it was, John. Yep, that's what it was.
I was waiting to say that.
You had to be disappointed. You got it. You couldn't hold it.
That you said 321. It's like you said that specifically to avoid saying 3-2-1 because you knew I'm here for some countdown jokes.
You just couldn't wait.
Yes.
Yeah, episode 321. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron
and John.
That's true. And you are who you say you are. I've verified this through our YouTube channel that I've watched all of our videos on, youtube.com/movieschmovie, which you can go to and subscribe to watch this if you're only listening to it. But good to see you guys. And
good to see you, man.
As well.
Got a bit of a stacked episode today. It's kind of added up over the past few days. We're going to talk about some news items at the top of the show. You two have seen a couple movies in some sort of combination that we're going to let you talk about briefly. And then the two big reviews that we're going to be featuring today on the podcast are two titles, day and date releases that are out when this podcast hits, which are not Eternals. But we are talking about Finch on Apple TV Plus, which stars Tom Hanks. And also the Beta Test, which is Jim Cummings' new movie, which is going to be, I think, in theatrical and VOD at the same time in some sort of combination. So we've all seen those two, but you'll get into some of the ones you've seen individually or together in a moment. But top of the show, news items. John, you wanted to bring up something relating to, I mentioned it, the Eternals. So what's going on with the Eternals?
Well, we haven't seen it. So here we are on the release date of the movie. Our only version of coverage for this movie right now can be the coverage everyone's been spooling out for the last couple of weeks, which is coverage of the Rotten Tomatoes numbers or the critical response, shall we say.
Yeah.
This is getting headlines like Marvel's worst reviewed movie ever, Marvel's most disappointing movie ever, whatever. I mean, I think we all know how subjective that the whole Rotten Tomatoes score can be in terms of a marketing tool. It can backfire. It can be manipulated by fans or by anti-fans or whatever. There's a lot that goes on with Rotten Tomatoes. It's not a pure thing. And I think we all know that it was really sort of a strange fluke of the recent era of these Marvel movies that this type of popcorn film was getting great critical response in addition to an audience response. So definitely. I don't know, I guess there's two questions I have. What do you guys think of the kind of over coverage of this? That it's like normally the buzz going into a Marvel movie is all this positive stuff, but they have to fill those spots with coverage of how lukewarm to negative the response has been. But the other side of that is, how are you actually feeling about the movie? Do these reviews change your mind at all about what you expect to see? Do you think maybe expectations being low might serve this movie? I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about this movie not having seen it yet, and I just wondered where you guys are with it, especially with regards to the critical response.
Steve, what do you think?
So, I mean, just for myself, I mean, I don't think any of this ever really has much of an impact on my desire to see the movie.
Right.
I think the only thing it kind of triggers in me and the way that we follow the industry in this way is just simply how piled on it is now that there's a chance that there's a Marvel movie that's quote unquote not good or rotten or however you want to measure it.
Right.
I think the idea, people in any conversation will talk about some Marvel movies that they think are not good, that are bad movies, but it somehow maintain some sort of fresh rating on a binary site like Rotten Tomatoes. I like Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not trying to cut on it, but I just feel like, it doesn't really impact me and doesn't really kind of bait me in any way to really kind of affect my want or lack of want to see a movie. I think it really is just something like John's saying, like how everywhere you look about the Eternals, all it's talking about is just because simply these journalists, these trades, these sites, these blogs, this is a moment that they've been really kind of waiting for.
It's strange how excited.
I mean, it's true though. It's strange. It's very like mean, in a way, like, but they really have been waiting for some sort of crack in the armor in terms of how Marvel or the MCU really exists in the film industry. That said, you look at like pre-sales on Fandango, anything like that, and I mean, they're still projecting a 75 to 80 plus million opening for this movie, which would be the second biggest opening of the, pandemic era. So, part of me is really just like, okay, well, all this, coverage for the Rotten Tomatoes store, there's two things you're looking for. You're trying to see how much MCU fans can sustain the franchise without the critical reception having anything to do with box office, which I lean towards that, to be honest with you. I really don't know that the critical consensus has much of an impact on a Marvel movie and box office in general, really. But, and the other thing is that if you want to watch Rotten Tomatoes, watch the, what is it called? Like the audience score, after a week or so, when a lot of verified viewers of the movie have a chance to rate it on Rotten Tomatoes, or I think they source it through Fandango. But it's just this weird thing where, like, people just want to hype something negative because it's a topic to talk about. And when you can only talk about so many things every time a Marvel movie comes out, it's like, it's a new conversation point that people are just completely piling on. But in general, not much of an impact on me. I, like you said, John, I kind of have feelings about what this movie is going to be, or, where it's going to go, or what it could do for the MCU. And I kind of, in general, don't really care what the consensus is in most cases. I just kind of want to watch it for myself and experience it. What about you, Ronald?
There's a term that kids use now. It's mid, referring to middle of the road weed, middle of the road things, right? I think when it comes to when it comes to, that was a Freudian slip. When it comes to Marvel, they've presented themselves like, it's almost like HBO. Like, HBO is a channel that creates premium things. Apple, a computer company that creates premium things. Marvel, a movie studio that creates premium things. And sometimes you might get a HomePod. You might get a thing that's not quite as popular as the mainstream things. The problem is, like, the thing that eats itself alive is like the people that are like unfazed by the idea that mediocrity can exist in a thing, which is to me, I think it's okay. I predicted this. I saw that trailer and I was like, this is a very mid trailer, and it is showing that the trailer really is pretty indicative. I mean, people have got, like, actual non-critics have been going to screeners of this and have repeated the same sentiments, and that's okay too. I think the issue is it's okay to have a mediocre Marvel movie,
right?
But,
and it's weird that it's such a story. It's weird that it's like so worth reporting, and it's also weird that if you look at the people on the extremes of the super negative or the super positive reviews for this movie, you can kind of see the agenda. If you look down the middle, you kind of get that vision of what you're talking about, Ronald, which is everybody, even people who were giving it kind of light positive, are basically saying this is middle of the road Marvel. This is mediocre. Yeah,
and I'm not saying that. Like, I'm saying that, like, a HomePod isn't a bad thing. Like, I have 2 HomePods in my house. They're incredible. But I'm just saying in terms of, like, impact on the culture. The problem is, here's the issue with Marvel. The impact on the culture directly affects the direction of the movie universe.
Yes.
So, like, if Eternals is not accepted well after this period, this grace period that everybody's talking about, I don't know if there's going to be an Eternals second one that feels like, or they may appear as secondary characters in another person's story, which isn't a terrible thing. I'd be okay with that. How about a Hulk movie? Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, there's something to be said about something not hitting the cultural zeitgeist the way that Marvel has been for 10 years straight.
Right. Well, but I mean, that's kind of what it is that, like, it's because they've always kind of hit this spot that it's like mediocre is a disappointment. We're talking about like an A student who sometimes brings home B's.
Right.
To make like a high D or something like that. Right. Or a low C even is like, well, what happened, bud? And I think that's where it's a story. But I think what you were talking about too, Steve, is that people have been waiting for this to happen. And even we have said, what will be that thing that just breaks the spell, the impression that these movies are going to win critics over and win fans over. And I think what you're both saying is interesting. None of us really listen to critics, I don't think, for an opinion about whether we're going to see a movie. Maybe if I'm trying to pick between 2 or 3 middle-of-the-pack movies about what I'll see, I'll look and see what the critical response is and maybe read some of the critics that I trust.
Sure.
But I don't just go by the binary of Rotten Tomatoes really ever. But I think that on top of that, there's this whole thing of like, okay, so we know these movies might not all be great. We're not going to necessarily listen to the critics. But when it is this pylon, I do think the celebratory nature of the discussion around a movie like Endgame or Black Panther or even one of the Spider-Man movies, I think it is part of the fun that makes Marvel this thing that people are willing to say, I like Marvel movies. You know what I mean? Is because they are sort of like, it is sort of the home team that keeps winning the game. You know what I mean? It is.
Yeah.
And so I do think it will be interesting to see a stretch of movies that hit people in this lukewarm way, maybe what that would do to this idea of what Marvel is. I think it's just the idea that they've clearly put so much into this. The cast is great. They hired a later Academy Award winning director. This movie was set to be this kind of bold new step for them, and it's interesting that that would be where the knives really came out, would be Marvel trying for a second to do something a little different. But I've read enough of the lukewarm reviews to believe that this is probably kind of a sluggish movie, or this is maybe an overlong movie with a lot of exposition. And different people seem to agree about what the strengths of the movie are. So I'm like, okay, maybe there are a few different strengths to this movie. Yeah. But, it's what you said, Ronald, what you feared from the trailer that kind of left you. I didn't so much think it looked mediocre as I felt like I didn't feel a hook being put in me. I didn't feel, which meant I didn't feel the average viewer being hooked by it either, So I think that's just the thing, that just whatever it is, this seems like a really big concept and a big swing that is maybe just going to be middle of the pack. It's going to be right there with whatever Captain Marvel and first
Age of Ultron
movies and Age of Ultron. And, all the ones that people rank lower than the these unquestionable successes. So
it breaks my heart. To be completely honest, it breaks my heart.
I feel bad for like Kumail and Brian Scott Tyree and all that. Stuff.
So there's an army. This army that I'm about to describe. The like. Oh, it's a woman. Women are taking over in the movie space. Any women-led narrative is trash. Anything that those people. That's what breaks my heart about this. It's not that the movie's mediocre. It's that a woman is at the helm, an Asian woman is at the helm. It's empowering women in the movie.
Right, Chloe Zhao and Gemma Chan and Salma Hayek and Angelina Jolie. This is a huge
breaks my heart because that may mean if they're going off of, if Marvel does Netflixy sort of stuff, they take they're like, okay, these things work. So if they say like a women-led, like half the cast being women, and if that doesn't work, are we not going to see a women-led narrative with more than one woman as a lead for a while? Are we just not going to see that for a while? I'm a little afraid of that.
I don't think it'll have that impact personally.
Yeah,
I don't
either.
I think we will see that. So I mean, I'm trying to assure you, and that probably won't happen. And
you talked to Kevin. You said Kevin.
Yeah, I talked to him the other day.
Don't worry about it.
I sent him a new hat, and he thanked me. And I asked him a couple things.
Now, Ronald, when you held up the fake phone, if you don't when you do the video, if you don't put in a little Kevin Feige head that pops down next to you in your square,
I'm gonna do that
on the line with Kevin Feige. No, I think that we've always liked these movies, but we aren't like the cheerleaders, Yeah. So I think that that is something that is interesting, is that we have yet to really reckon with this. We have yet to have to sit here and pretend we like something that we hate. We've had differences along the way, but there hasn't been like this, oh, this sucks, this was a waste of my time, and then someone else saying, no, I thought it was incredible. We just haven't had that kind of spread of opinion on most of this stuff. So I really do think, I think there is something about being slightly underwhelmed by this movie that will feel like a disappointment if that's what happens.
Right.
But yeah, we haven't seen it yet. And like you said, Steve, when have we listened to, if you got into movies because you like popcorn fare and action movies and stuff, when were the critics the people that set you on the path of those movies ever? So this just seemed like this was the one that was going for the critical respect. I think that's the thing that we all sort of know. And who knows, maybe there will be no Eternals 2, but they've done this before where they've pivoted and they've made it, they've made something work based on something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think that they're scared rabbits, Ronald, in the sense of will they change future plans for some of these characters. They may just say we need to really be careful not to, not to broaden our scope so much that we lose that, whatever, like I said, whatever that hook is that people feel when they see one of these trailers and they just, they're like, okay, let me buy my ticket as soon as I can. So,
right.
Here's what I love. Go. I'm so sorry.
I was gonna say, just to piggyback on your comment about like the concern of like, a movie that's directed by a woman, led by 3 or 4 huge stars that are all female,
the hugest,
and one of the most diverse casts, that aren't in like an Avengers movie, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, this is one of the most diverse casts in really most of these comic book movies. So I mean, that's also, and it's horrible to say this in 2021, but like to a mainstream audience and to some critics, that's a challenging idea. Yeah. And that's ridiculous. And the fact that like the movie has like, it's like Marvel's first like love scene, like some people are like, recoiling to the idea of even having that kind of stuff in a comic book movie. And that's something that is just, to me, that makes me more interested, because it's like pushing something that's different. Like everybody that complains that Marvel movies are one kind of thing, the moment that you have something that's a little different than that, which it sounds like this is trying to be, that's when you get this kind of response. And I'm not trying to defend the movie because I haven't seen it, but I just feel like those things in the conversation all seem to be correlated. And it just seems like, you have this, criticism, this low-key criticism that is like a through line of Marvel, which is that like they're all the same and they're all this and they're all that. Well, this is pretty different. This is like, a really, significant, successful female director taking this comic book movie on, an Academy Award-winning director, and a cast that's so diverse, and a story that seems like one of the bigger scopes of any of the Marvel movies that are standalones, at least at this point,
and self-contained as a movie too. At this point, to get something new that's self-contained is crazy.
It just makes it even harder for some people to digest, and that's just ridiculous. And I think that's really a part of what's hurting it, even in a critic's environment. I think some people can't get past some of that still.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to get at. Like I wasn't, it's hard. It's a hard thing to talk about, mostly because the three of us fall in the liberal sort of space where like we're pretty open to images that, are not regular parts of our lives. And that's okay, right? It's a beautiful thing to accept different images that aren't a regular part of your life. You know what I'm kind of looking forward to? A year from now, when we're like a year removed from this, and we do like a watch list episode of like Marvel movies, and somebody's like, I loved Thor 1 and 2. I loved Eternals. I loved Age of Ultron. I know it's like it gets me kind of randomly emotional. I think it's because like people find what they love,
Yeah,
it's a strange thing. And I love that it's like this. I love that the MCU has an opportunity to become this. I love that there are ones that people are going to be like, I fucking hate that movie. And I love that movie. And this is a great one. Now that I think about it, after the events of this movie, now Eternals makes more sense. Like, that's going to happen.
Yeah. And that's the joy of it, is that there's so much, some people don't say there's enough variety, but there really is. I think, at the end of the day, in this universe. And it's funny you mentioned that because like I was talking to a friend of the pod, Amanda, who does the Introverts Laid Out podcast.
Hello, Amanda.
She's always voting on our polls, by the way. So
amazing
polls going. But anyway, we were talking about the MCU and like the excitement to go see the Eternals, movie this weekend. And she was saying that I think it was maybe it's after Shang-Chi or earlier this year, she did like a watch of the whole MCU with her mother. And just speaking to your point, people love what they love. Her mother's favorite movie in the whole MCU universe was Thor: Dark World. You know what I mean? Or one, it was I think it was Thor 1 or 2. It was
That's
like her
amazing.
mom was like, and that's the thing, is that it doesn't matter. Enough people like all these movies that there's something to take away from any of them.
Yes.
You don't need to like all of them. I mean, I guess it's at the end of the day. But yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. And hopefully next week we can talk about Eternals a little more and see where we fall.
And Shang-Chi.
Yeah, that's right. You guys will see Shang-Chi soon.
Yeah.
So will we see it by next Friday?
Maybe.
Hopefully. Well, let's transition to the other news thing that we were gonna mention some of the Disney Plus stuff. And you want to bring up the Boba Fett trailer, but next week is a big day, like their Disney Plus day. Next Friday, the 12th, is going to be a big thing for them, and a part of that is Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings coming out on the Disney Plus service
for
So
free.
Ronald and I will finally get to see this movie, hopefully before we record.
Yeah.
But it's a big day. Like that's a streaming service. Like that's a big day that they're promoting. They had the trailer for Boba Fett, which I think that comes out in December.
Yeah.
But there's also conversations that there's going to be a trailer next Friday for the Obi-Wan series, and shit could get crazy that day. I mean, they could announce a lot of stuff. But
there's supposedly
talk about the Boba Fett stuff.
Star Wars. There's supposed to be 11 Star Wars series at some point in development.
And they're going to talk
like a
about
lot. But when you hear about like all the stuff they've been doing over at Marvel, you can get to 11 pretty quick with some of this stuff. Especially if you start breaking off some of these series like they did with Boba Fett. You know, we seem to skip Mandalorian this year, but we got Boba Fett instead.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing. What were you about to say, Ronald?
How crazy is it that, I mean, no, I'm not saying this to insult the world, but Star Wars has lost its good faith in the cinematic universe.
I mean, Star Wars is that okay? We were saying what can happen to Marvel if it loses that magic touch.
The opposite.
But I'm saying Star Wars is kind of in that spot of like it's the respected brand, but it does not have that instant. Like it is so fractured. Like Star Wars fans like one thing or another. So that thing you were just saying about the MCU fandom, it's already happened to Star Wars. It's already factions that battle, and you will talk to someone and say I love Star Wars, and then you'll say man I love Solo, and they'll want to punch you in the face.
Yeah.
And then they'll say my favorite movie is Rogue One, and then you'll want to punch them in the nuts.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm assuming this is a man. But no, there's a lot going into this situation that is touchy with Star Wars fandom. So you never know if there's going to be a new project that's going to like really please people or not. But the Obi-Wan show sounds to me like one, at least on paper, everything they're adding to it sounds like one that's really trying to be like a kind of a big deal, you know?
It's pretty cool, man. Like the fact that the TV shows are informing fandom in a way that I would have never expected, you know? There may be a point where the TV shows are informing the cinematic universe, like where people are so excited for like Mandalorian being in a film version or Boba Fett being in a film version of, you know, his story or being included in a story. That, to me, is really incredible, man. Like that.
Yeah.
I think that Disney is on to something about having these long form stories on their streaming service. So we'll see, man.
What did you guys think of the Boba Fett teaser that was released?
It looks all right. You know.
Go ahead.
It looks like these Disney Plus shows for Star Wars. It's that level of production value. I'm interested in the kind of gangland story that it's trying to tell. The sort of underworld. Every world has an underworld is a pretty cool tagline for the show. I like seeing Fennec Shand. I like seeing that she's back. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that is really making me think, oh, that looks amazing, or it just looks like an extension of the brand we already know with Mandalorian. And I'm excited about 4 or 5 episodes at that quality level that's going to dig into, like, you know, dealing canonically with what's the aftermath of everything at Jabba's palace and all that stuff, you know. But I don't know if there's anything visually or like. There wasn't anything that wowed me in that sense in the trailer as far as like, oh my God, I can't believe we're getting to see this or that. It just kind of seems like more of the same. And yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm on board.
Yeah.
I feel kind of similar. The good part is like, if there is something that separates the two of those shows, but The Mandalorian versus Boba Fett, I mean, that'll be cool. If it doesn't, if it feels tonally kind of similar, that'll be cool too. So, what those shows do on a like a storytelling level, to me, is something that, you know, I was not expecting. So for this to become a universe in the television world is beyond my wildest dreams. So, you know, everything feels like a gift. I know it sounds super like almost like uncritical of this thing, but it really does feel like a gift. You know, I've complained about the Marvel stuff. Really still feels like a gift. It feels like the best gift. It's like if you wanted a PlayStation 5 with a terabyte in it, and instead you got 500 gigabytes. You're like, oh man, I would have loved it. But this is still amazing. It feels like a fucking gift. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there would have been another good segue earlier from this to our first movie, but we were talking earlier about how and maybe really what we were bemoaning was that, like, okay, so Eternals doesn't have a lot of good buzz going into it. Why do you have to fill all those spots with stories about this movie not having a great critical response when you could be hyping other things that are coming out, such as the sort of things that come out on these streaming services that we're talking about, and Apple TV Plus in particular has a problem. I think you were saying, Steve, and I agree with there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't seem to get noticed, and it doesn't seem like they're really putting it out there that much. Aren't we talking about 2 movies now that are Apple TV Plus movies, or is yours not that?
Mine is a Netflix one, but the Apple TV Plus one is a huge movie. All of their shows have a very similar problem as well. Like, Invasion just came out. Foundation, both sci-fi, beautiful movies beautiful TV shows that look like movies. Like, there are movies that don't look as good as these films, right? Films that don't look as good as these shows, sure. And we don't
know what to call anything anymore.
Yeah,
there's content that doesn't look as good as this IP.
I mean, like, I dare you to show me something that looks better visually than any of these Disney Plus shows. I mean,
yeah, dude, we're talking
about all of them.
The first two were supposed to be a Netflix and a Paramount Plus movie.
Yeah, you're right. But these are streamers, and I think Ronald's in particular is a movie that's getting lost in the shuffle of all this other hype. So let's maybe talk about that Netflix movie, because it's the same as what I was saying about Apple TV Plus. It's part of the same conversation. Stuff comes out and just gets lost. You know?
James Samuel, the brother of Seal, wrote and directed a Western called The Harder They Fall. I don't even want to.
Read it.
These people, look, Zazie Beetz, Jonathan Majors, Damian Wayans Jr., Dion Cole, Idris Elba, Regina King, Lakeith Stanfield. It is a jam-packed movie from like start to finish. One of the best Westerns I've seen in quite some time, right? No promotion for this movie. I've not heard a single sound about this movie.
And so this is the point I want to just mention. So this is the Netflix thing. And we talked about it before we started recording. So the Netflix approach to this kind of stuff is, if it's not maybe the Martin Scorsese, like Irishman, it's not like the big, like, holiday Oscar, whatever it might be. Even movies like Red Notice, like the biggest budgeted movie that they have with The Rock, Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot, like these are huge movies, right? Yeah. Massive budgets. And you're talking about a movie that with a cast like that, and even positive where the buzz around it's been very positive.
So good.
What they do is like they trailers. They do some social media stuff. The movie comes out. If the movie hits and stays in their top 1, 2, 3, then they latch on to that, and that's where their marketing kicks in. The most recent example being Squid Game and other things that have caught on recently, like there's TV series, it's called Maid, The Maid. Yeah. And like, no one knows what this is. And then it comes out and now it's like in the top 3 for like 3 weeks. And they're like, that's all you see Netflix promoting. So I'm curious, now that The Harder They Fall is out, I haven't seen it yet. I'm very excited to. But if it catches on and like catches into those top 3 slots for a week or so, I'd almost be willing to bet you're going to start seeing that on a lot more like sites, platforms, digital media, things that we would see some of these promotions for, because that's just how they do it. Like they have so much content. If you think about it, it's an interesting approach because they have no way to promote all of it anywhere near the same outside of being able to say like these are our biggest titles, and only those get multiple trailers. Like there's multiple trailers for this, for Red Notice, like they get that same kind of marketing, but they don't get the kind of thing you get for theatrical. But if it catches on week 2, 3, you're going to be hearing tons about this movie.
That makes sense.
So weird.
Why Netflix is that way with like something will be brand new. I'll know it's out, and it'll be something. I'm like, why am I having a hard time? Why do I have to go type this in instead of finding it?
That's exactly it.
Then I'll come back a week or two later, and I'll see it. It'll be much easier to find.
Yeah,
it'll be under all the little headers, and I'm like, okay. Hearing you say that, that makes sense. That it's not in that first week or that first day that they know how to position things. But it can be incredibly frustrating when it's something that seems like it should be a big deal, or that even seems like Netflix's algorithm should be telling me about this thing based on what I've watched, and the fact that that it's something that's right up your alley and that you were just watching the last episode of or something, and then something new comes out and it doesn't show it to you. I mean, I don't like that, but at least I understand how that can be, that they're it is often within a few days of something coming out that the conversation shifts to that. And that's when Netflix knows, this is the thing. Squid Game is a great example of that, where suddenly here's the thing that people are actually talking about all the time. And that has become a big, it was Halloween costumes were big from Squid Game. It's now like the source of memes and everything. So I think that that makes sense. Because I did notice it became like the Squid Game channel, like a week after Squid Game came out.
Yeah. So. Also, Delroy Lindo's in it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll say I forgot him.
The Five Bloods combination, and they're together on screen, and chemistry is like off the charts. It's like it's a movie like, okay, I haven't seen Lakeith in a scene with this person, and then we're in a scene together. You're like, oh my god, what about these two? They haven't been. Oh, when they're in a scene, okay, God, man. Really enjoyed that movie. So please see The Harder They Fall. Tell people about it. It is on Netflix and it's gorgeous. And the sound is unreal. If you have like a sound bar, like the shots are coming from either side. So like when there's shootouts, there's like pew, 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 pew. It's crazy the way that they mix the sound in that movie. But go ahead, Steve. I'm so sorry.
I forgot I even saw this, but talking about Netflix and their marketing and stuff, I did see a Netflix movie this week that I wanted to mention. It was the that it's like the prequel slash side story of that the Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead?
Yeah,
the Army of Thieves movie.
How was it?
I liked it. I thought it was really entertaining. It does not do anything different for like these heist thrillers, but I mean, it's like a heist thriller. And I really liked him in Army of the Dead, or I don't even remember that's what it was called, Army of the Dead.
I think it was.
But the guy who played the safecracker, like it's basically his story and like his, backstory that kind of got him to the point that you see him. But it's another example of something where like that I forgot that movie was even coming out. Like Army of the Dead only came out like 6 or 7 months ago.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy that it's out already. And they didn't do very much promotion for it at all. But here it is sitting in the top 2-3 slots. So the same thing that I'm talking about for The Harder They Fall, if this movie stays in the top 5 for like a week or so, they're going to start promoting it more. They're going to find ways to get people to see this movie because it is really fun. It's really entertaining. It's got a really nice, diverse cast. It moves really quick. And again, the guy who is the star of it, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but his first name is Matthias. But he is a German actor, writer, director. He actually directed this and stars in it. And
wow.
It's pretty impressive. I mean, I got to say, like, I was pretty entertained and it's really fun. So, I mean, even if you didn't like Army of the Dead, this Army of Thieves spinoff that they've done with this character, I thought was very entertaining. And I don't know. Ludwig Dieter is his name in the movie. But, I don't know, but that's another example. Again, like a average / above average entertaining movie comes out on Netflix, pretty decent budget movie. No one knows it exists. No one knows this movie exists.
Insane.
But it's in the top 3 of all of their titles across the globe. So like people are watching it.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the context that we lose sometimes is that like if you see it in that top list, it's actually being watched by a shitload of people.
Yeah.
How much of it they watch, I don't know. But like to crack that list, you're talking about a really, really penetration is like pretty solid, like for their subscriber base. But yeah, I forgot I was even going to mention that. Army of Thieves is also on Netflix now. And I definitely recommend checking that out too.
Cool.
What's the one that you got, John? You got the
yes,
Paramount
this
Plus
was,
one.
and you're right, not on Apple TV Plus at all. We're going to talk about that one in a minute. No, this is, I didn't even, like, what number movie is this in the Paranormal Activity series? Paranormal Activity Next of Kin, that is.
That's a good question.
6?
I also saw this movie.
This show.
This show.
This piece of show.
This
Piece of movie. Yeah, so it's as you said, it's a I guess I'm seeing it on Paramount Plus and Amazon Prime, but I think that's through your Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
You're able
It
to
looks like
see
this
that.
is the 7th one.
Yeah. Okay, 7th. And it's kind of trying to be a reboot, I think. I may have fallen off the 5th or 6th in the series, or maybe I skipped off on the 3rd and 4th and then watched the 5th or something. But I'm spotty on where
This is
series
the 7th.
left
The
us.
7th?
Yeah.
7th one, yes. Next of Kin following
1, 2, 3, 4 marked ones in the Ghost Dimension.
Ghost Dimension in 2015. So it's been a little bit of a while after they kind of cranked these out for a few years there. I don't know. I think this has, like, it has some interesting places that it gets to, and it has a couple of moments where the scares are legit, I guess. But I think it stretches the found footage or sort of, handheld camera thing. There's moments where there's just no explanation as to how something's being filmed. Like they'll use the motivation. You know how they sometimes will have a person like either drop or put down a camera?
Yeah.
And that becomes a thing. There's one scene where there's like a camera on one side and a camera on the other. And it's like you can believe that it's saying, oh, that camera's over there and this camera's over here, and that's why we're getting a reverse shot on this scene. But then the camera kind of moves a little bit, like a handheld camera shot. And it's like they didn't know themselves whether this shot was motivated by a person holding the camera or by the kind of, like I said, stationary camera you get. That's like, so it's all supposed to be motivated in this thing. And I felt like it really lost whatever that is like specific about these movies, where, I mean, the first movie, the magic is a camera sitting on a tripod filming people doing nothing, and then the moments that happen, the scares, it's a result not just of you scanning the scene for a few seconds, but minutes, tens of minutes you're spending in that movie looking at nothing, waiting for something to happen. And a lot of people don't like it for that reason. I remember being really freaked out. I watched it in my basement by myself one night with headphones on. So it was like,
oh, wow.
It really got to me. I was looking over my shoulder a lot. But I don't know. I mean, I think these movies, we probably all have installments or moments from them that we think are good. It's not like a schlocky, shitty series. It's actually pretty inventive, and I think it actually, for what it did initially with like a no budget and a solid idea, I think it's one of those horror success stories that I love to think about. But this movie did not do it. As they say, this is not it. Whatever it tried to add, I think it really detracted from that claustrophobic feeling. Like when I saw the quick previews for this, or just the poster image, I thought, oh, some people are going to be out at like a cabin in the woods, and they're going to have the similar kind of Paranormal Activity story.
Yeah.
But that's not what this is at all. This is like a backwoods cult thing, and it really is trying to do like Midsommar at the same time as Paranormal Activity. And I just know I didn't really buy it, and I also didn't. I found it like boring in stretches. And then when it gets to the sort of quote unquote good stuff, like I said, there's some good jolts and scares in there, but it's not the same like visceral scare that you kind of want from these movies. I think that you're used to.
Right.
So I agree. The weird thing is like this is I can accept that it's filmed in 4K. I can accept that.
Yeah, that everybody's camera phone is like super high quality.
Super high quality. I can accept that. I can't accept the lighting. I can't accept that it's professionally lit, where you can see everyone's face, like everybody's expression. It zooms in at the right time. There's like movie level edits in the found footage before you give it to somebody. This is footage from when it's happening, and the twist can't be they're assholes,
right?
Like that. They're assholes? That's the twist? Like,
that's kind of the twist. These people who seemed like weird assholes, they're actually really weird assholes.
They're just assholes. It's not like a crazy, it's just like, oh, they're assholes. They've just shitheads. They're just, so it really had a lot of promise, man. The trailer got me. Whoever did this trailer edit, by the way, I have a friend that edits trailers. We have to have him on. trailers are what real people in, and this movie got me with the trailer. But little did I know that we should have had the person that edited the trailers to edit the actual movie, because this one was a dud that had a lot of potential, man. It had a lot of cool ideas that just didn't pay off in the end. And you're right. I think my cousin called it Paranormal Summer.
Yeah. I mean, it just didn't feel. I mean, again, I would say that like it feels like an attempt to reboot this thing.
Yes,
The
it
way
really
it ends
does.
is really weird and kind of corny feeling. Like that guy who comes walking out. You know the part I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Kind of Terminator almost sort of figure. It's just silly. It's
So,
just silly
so I'm
stuff
supposed
in
to accept
movie.
this because he's muscular, like that. This is like a thing. Get
Yeah.
out of here.
No, there's some silly things.
Yeah. Get out of here. Yeah.
So it sounds like we're passing on that one.
I guess we are. We're saying this is one of those movies on streaming that should be ignored. I don't know if I'm being that hard on it, but I do think it was boring. I mean, I think the worst crime of this movie was that it felt boring, on top of all the little problems we have. So I think if it felt zippy and it had all these problems, it would still be somewhat fun, but it definitely was, you get bogged down with them like trying to set up the reality of it and trying to make it relatable, but the setup is so outlandish from the start that I just don't think it can never have that simplicity of the first one, which I might be wrong to think that's the hook of this series anymore. If I haven't seen the last couple, maybe it spins out into all this cultish stuff, but it for me, like, and Ronald, how much did you love the scene where they do the internet research? And they like put in the demon's name, and they come up with this. It says it's a demon that da 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 da, and it's like that's presented with any kind of import, but it's like 3/4 of the way into the movie, and they just happen to be near a computer. I don't know. To me, it felt like a really weird time to try to introduce the internet search information, where now you know what the demon's powers are or whatever. Corny as hell.
Weird internet nerdy fact about that scene. You know why it was so weird? On top of just that,
Why?
The links were purple. They had been clicked already. So they were doing new research, but the sites had already been clicked. So it was like they were.
Now, is that a sign that they were just doing second takes and third takes and not refreshing everything?
They were.
Or is that supposed to be like a clue to us that the person who already was using that computer is already researching this cult shit?
Oh, shit. They should have cleared the cache.
Should have cleared the cache. These cultists don't clear their cache.
Damn it. I didn't even think about that.
That's the subtitle for the next Paranormal Activity movie.
Cultists don't clear their cache.
Yeah.
Or just clear your
the cache.
Clear the
Clear the
cache.
cache.
Wipe it clean.
Wipe it clean. I wiped this my memory clean of this film.
Get it out of here.
Fair enough. You guys want to talk about the beta test?
Sure.
Let's.
So the beta test is out today, and I think it's being distributed by IFC and theaters, and it's available on the SVOD platforms for video on demand. But this is the new one from a guy we've kind of grown to become fans of. I mean, we talk about him a lot on the podcast, but Jim Cummings, writer, director, actor, he did Thunder Road, and last year or this year, I don't even remember what year it was, the Wolf of Snow Hollow he put out, which I think we all liked. If
I didn't see it yet. Is it good?
Okay,
I really liked it.
I really liked it a lot. I thought it was great. Yeah, definitely go back and find that.
Okay.
Especially getting into this one if you enjoyed this one. But basically, this is a cool one because I remember following. He's a really great follow on Twitter. Like, he's a very big promoter of like DIY filmmaking. Just go make a movie, do it independently, find somebody to put it out for you, whatever it takes. And I know that he and the co-writer, co-director for this movie, PJ McCabe, like, I've been following them as they've been like basically creating and making this movie become a reality.
Wow.
And that includes like ways that they have funded the movie, new and exciting ways to crowdfund that isn't like simply Kickstarter or Indiegogo, other means of doing it. And seeing them take it to festivals and get, a pretty good reaction for it, and to get some sort of distribution deal like this is really exciting for them. And I'm really excited to see what comes next for Jim Cummings specifically. I think he's a really interesting person in the industry for that reason, very specifically. But what did you guys know about this going in? I mean, any awareness beyond me saying, hey, do you want to check this out and talk about it on the show? I guess, what did you think of it?
I saw the trailer. I'm a big fan of Thunder Road. Thunder Road's like one of my favorite movies in the last couple years. So, I knew his caliber of acting and how he could go from like silly to serious kind of quickly. So that was promising. So the idea of what this movie represented and finding out that he also wrote and directed this one was pretty promising. So that's what I had set in my mind. But
Right.
what about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, you said Jim Cummings, and I was like, yes. So,
Yeah.
right. I mean, that's where I was with it. Honestly, I loved him popping up, even though it's not like my favorite scene or anything. But in the new Halloween movie, I loved him popping up. That felt like a real mark of like,
Yeah.
the right people are noticing. David Gordon Green, Danny McBride. Somehow he feels like he should be in cahoots with those people because those people do go out on a limb and do these things. And Jim Cummings, I just don't know that anybody does toxic masculinity like he does right now. I mean,
Yeah.
and this movie is like, holy shit. I mean, it's just, like the things, it's almost like he took the things that I loved most about The Wolf of Snow Hollow. Is that what it's called? That he took, which I kind of loved, but I mean, if he took the things I loved best about that movie and like pushed it into this, it's like, I was thinking the movie it was making me think of is not even a movie I particularly like, but I was thinking about the director Neil LaBute's early movies, like Friends and Neighbors, and The Company of Men. He examined that similar kinds of characters, these super toxic men who are just desperate, and I don't know. There's something about Jim Cummings, the thing you mentioned, Ronald, this being able to bring the silly in. This is like such a bleak movie on so many levels, but it's so comic on so many levels. And there's some like brilliantly hilarious moments woven in with these really uncomfortable things. And the way that it's shot is really interesting. Like there's an opening scene that really takes a turn into some very unsettling. I mean, honestly, I don't know if anything in the movie, which is full of these kind of, oh my gosh, moments. The first scene is the moment that like, I was like, I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for it to get that dark, that intense. The choreography of that, the way the camera moved, the way you were kind of lulled into not knowing what was going on. I think there's something really, really smart about this movie in particular. But I think Jim Cummings' aesthetic and if PGA McCabe or whatever you said his name was, or their name was, this collaborator, I don't know anything about them. Anyway, I think my curiosity about Jim Cummings, the things I was kind of hoping to see when you said, do you want to check out the new Jim Cummings? It was like, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't see the trailer. I didn't really even read the log line, So I find that that's a great way to go into a movie these days. If you're going to see it anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
Is to just not know anything. But yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is what I knew going in was all I needed to know. And I think that I just feel that way even more, that like you said, Steve, whatever this guy does, I'm really interested to see, because he doesn't seem like he's interested in kind of leaving a mark. He doesn't want his movies to go down too easy. And yet he does have the ability to craft like a pleasing film, like a nice looking movie that is fun to watch in some ways. So I think that, that mixture can be really electric.
Yeah, and I think like what he kind of plays to him specifically, and even in his performance in the movie, he really kind of plays into this beyond the conversations of like toxic masculinity or like a post Me Too Hollywood industry, because there's a lot of that in the movie too, which is really entertaining and interesting to have a little bit of a peek behind that curtain. He just really kind of like that unnerving awkwardness. Like I think that is just like, that's what makes this movie. I think that's what kind of caught me with this movie, or made me most interested in sticking with the movie. I think the story itself is really interesting, which is just simply that these, seemingly random people are selected to receive a letter that is an invitation to like a sexual encounter, an anonymous.
Did it make you think
encounter.
of the movie The Invitation, Steve? Like the way that it's like this event, a small event that you see in the movie, how it's about to get bigger,
to grow. Yeah. And I mean, I think that idea is like an enticing idea, especially in today's world. And it's just like how people handle this, people that you think people that you think know what they want in life, and what they have in life, and appreciate it. It just really kind of brings that to the surface, and especially a character like that, which you're not doing a lot of guessing, it seems, with him when you're watching the movie, but the way it escalates and the way it kind of boils over, and him specifically and his performance, like how that looks on screen, is really, really entertaining and really interesting. And even the ideas that kind of the movie opens up into in the final act without spoilers. 'Cause I think we'd all kind of recommend people to check this out if you can find it on a video on demand, or like if it's in theaters near you and you're comfortable seeing it in a theater. I would say go support a movie like this and check this out, because I think it's talking a lot about, you know, people's inhibitions, people's real wants, and people, you know, what they're willing to do to sacrifice. It's unsettling, and it's like very raw, and it surprised me a lot, actually. I think that it's a lot of what he does well in his other movies, but there's some new things in this that really kind of get opened up, and I think help him a lot in terms of how interested I am in him as a performer, writer, director. I think he's like one to watch for sure. Ronald, what did you? I don't know that you really got into it. What was your take on it?
Oh man, I think there's like I don't think there's enough of an examination of men who don't update their software. People that are kind of where their values are, whatever they learned at, you know, whenever they were developing these raging hormones, they kind of stop. You know, there's no development of any ideas more complex than that. Then on top of that, the man that is very handsome, that feels like he should just be getting things because he's handsome and in a space. Then on top of that, like the guy who picks on people who are clear, who he perceives as being weaker than him, and only picks on those sorts of people, right?
Right.
You know, I'm meeting, you know, in a corporate space, I met I worked at a place where the average age was 25. I met 1 million people like him that would kind of like, there was like this test, there's an initial test. Like, they see you, Steve. They're like, hey, this guy has blue eyes. I could beat him up. They'll test you. And Steve, you give a visceral reaction. And they're like, oh, I can never do this to this guy again. Because, you know what I mean? And they're like, John, I'm going to pick on John. John's like, don't fuck with me. And it's like, oh, I can never do this again to this person. Like, it's a strange thing when you meet people like this in the world who just, again, haven't updated their software. And they don't have to be old. I think that there's this narrative is that there's a lot of like older people who are doing this. Like people in their like 60s that are like, oh, you know, that feel like this. The world is... There are people that are in their 20s that are saying things like this. So
it wouldn't be a problem if it weren't that way. You know what I mean? If it were just people in their 60s, it would be dying out. It's the fact that people in their 20s got in on this system, and the movie makes a point. Two or three people tell him, everybody wants to end what you are doing. Everybody wishes you were cut out of this. Like, because he's trying to, the packaging deal that he's talking about, which is he's an agent. But he gets told 2 or 3 times that this packaging deal you want to do is just you trying to take money from other people that need to make a deal with each other, and we don't need you to make this deal.
Right.
And like everybody on the creative side of the industry is ready for you not to take our money anymore. So we don't need you. And like, you know, like I feel like even beyond that, there's like a scene where a hotel concierge cuts him down to size, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's like, so I think it's like it's the Jim Cummings thing. You mentioned his handsomeness, Ronald. I love that he kind of weaponizes his own handsomeness like against himself, which is to say that he's this guy who should be succeeding, but he's too fucking awkward and narcissistic, and especially this character, like the way he's able to use that exact thing you're talking about. Like this guy could be a leading man, but the light's just not hitting him right. Like he's a little too clammy, he's a little too desperate. The stink of failure is too much on him. He can't quite balance these things. You know, you see other people that in fact I looked at the credits, his friend PJ, played by, it looks like PJ McCabe. So that, I guess, is the guy who co-wrote the movie. I did not know that. That the guy
and co-directed it as well.
Yeah, he's great. He kind of provides a counterpoint of like a much more likable, like you kind of can envision the movie that's about that guy, and it would be about a likable guy who gets in over his head.
Right.
But that's not what Jim Cummings is. He doesn't want to let us off the hook that easily, I don't think.
No.
He wants us to...
Right.
But we never stop... There are moments where you kind of are rooting for him against people he's going up against, but then there's those moments, like maybe from halfway into the movie on, where it's like, okay, you're losing that feeling because he is so clearly the most dangerous person. But also the actual story that's going on around him, you kind of start to see what the stakes are and maybe what was intended to happen, and how he might thwart that, and if he can, and all that stuff. There's a lot of the guy who wishes he was the kingmaker, who wants to be in control, who's being manipulated and can't handle it. You don't, that doesn't have to be addressed as post Me Too or post Harvey Weinstein or in this conversation about toxic male energy. But if you add all those things to this, I think Jim Cummings is like this character sketch has a lot of impact at this moment in time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much so that you'll be left at the end of the movie really, there's a lot of ways to maybe go with like what was the movie ultimately kind of trying to say about like not so much this type of person, but the world that we live in.
Yeah.
But if you just chalk it up as a dark comedy, even if it doesn't have a message, it uses that current feeling. I don't know. Movies should feel like they're from the current moment, right? They should kind of take a bite out of you right now. There's a great line to what we're saying. It sums up kind of what we're saying. This isn't spoiling anything, but there's a moment in the film where the guy's fiance says to him after he gets really taken aback by something she just said to him. She says, "I'm not insulting you. I'm describing you."
Oh, that hurt my heart, by the way.
I know.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's a tough thing, man. Like, it was just, it was great. I would suggest it to, especially it has a hook. It has a hook to it that you could describe to anybody.
Yeah, within minutes, the movie has that hook. It gets it going too.
Yeah.
It doesn't waste time going there. So
yeah, God, man, really enjoyed it.
yeah.
Good. Again, in theaters and on video on demand. So find that this weekend if you can.
Cool.
The last movie we're going to be talking about is probably the biggest movie that we're probably talking about this week. This is the new Apple TV Plus feature film starring Tom Hanks, also the voice talents of Caleb Landry Jones. This is the movie called Finch. This is a Universal movie that was produced by Universal and pushed back 2-3 times. It was called BIOS at one point and eventually sold to Apple TV Plus and now available to all of its subscribers on the platform this weekend. Directed by Miguel Sapochnik, who is most known probably for all the amazing episodes of Game of Thrones that he's done. But this is his newest offering in terms of feature films. But what did you guys think of Finch?
I loved it.
I know, so did I.
Same.
Oh, there it is, the hat trick, guys. It's that simple. The reality is that this movie really doesn't really do anything brand new, I don't think. You can kind of feel it going as it goes and know where it's going to go the whole time. The log line is basically Tom Hanks in a post-apocalyptic world has a dog who he's making an AI being to take care of because he knows he's dying. I just said that. And it stars Tom Hanks. If you're not crying
I'm not
already,
joking. I'm not joking,
John,
Steve.
I see you.
You started to get
John, I see you. That's what happens. And I mean, that's this movie. I loved this movie, man. Like I was,
so
I don't know why I was surprised,
so,
but I was so into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like I'm not trying to get too heavy, but
Get heavy.
I draw parallels to, so my dad is like, when he was alive, he was very frantic about teaching me lessons. And I always thought it was like really weird when I was a kid. It was like, do this, save money, do this. And it felt like the way that Tom Hanks was talking to this machine. I remember how I felt when I first started to drive. And I remember like, these are all things that I feel like we've all kind of felt at some point in our lives where we're like this flailing little robot trying to gain some sort of sense of self and control over your body. And this, a parent or a figure, a parental figure barking these very frantic things to us so that we got used to the idea of living without them. It's just that is a heavy concept and it was done so beautifully. You're right. It has been done before, but it hasn't been done in such a palatable way that I've seen.
Such a clean movie. I mean, honestly, when it gets to the end and the credits show you how many people were in the movie and you go, oh yeah, really? There really wasn't anything extra in this movie. Yeah, like nothing extra.
It's great. And it's a great term. It's yet, very lean.
And it reminds you of something like how Tom Hanks can hold your interest through a movie like Castaway, like where it's like, where you, and I know most people say Castaway, but isn't it 2 words? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it is 2 words.
So it's Cast Away. Anyway.
Cast Away.
Away. No, but like it's like the feels start to come out because Tom Hanks can do this. Tom Hanks is one of those actors that we will watch him go through procedural stuff. We'll watch him do trial and error. We'll watch him tighten the screws on a robot's head and believe that he knows what he's doing. You know, that in this world this is grounded. This movie, so it moves like it does move at kind of a, I don't know, like a Nomadland type pace of like following people just through their existence or following characters through their existence. But what it's doing with the stuff that we were talking about, Ronald, the procedural aspect of teaching someone things they need to know, the ticking clock of that, the fact that he wants to have these moments of enjoyment, but he can't. Every time he's kind of letting his guard down and starting to enjoy what's going on, he has to snap into this kind of parental or whatever you want to call it role, patriarchal something role to say, I'm not going to be here. You guys need to be able to take care of each other. Getting that going, it's so sweet. I mean, it's like the ultimate, if you're an animal lover and you watch a movie because you sometimes you get upset by movies because they don't seem to care enough about the animals in the movie.
Right.
This is not that movie. This is a great movie if you're an animal lover because they care about this dog. He cares about this dog the way you care about your dog.
Yeah.
And even the robot, and I guess I'll say robots. There's a couple robot characters, very endearing characters. It's just Tom Hanks, like the delight he has on his face, just that he has someone to talk to all of a sudden when he builds this robot is like so palpable. And there's so much just love in those scenes where he's just delighted with this personality that's developing in front of his eyes, but there's a sadness to it because he knows why he's doing this. And so everything they're doing is against that backdrop. I mean, it's like, I guess all we're saying is how effective and well made, and this movie looked good and felt good, and the effects were really tasteful. I kept wondering how much of that was a practical, in the moment, robotic thing, and how much of that was, CGI. And whatever mixture they did was great because it looked great on my television, which often is where effects go to die, is on your high, stuff that looks okay in the theater sometimes looks shitty at home. But these effects looked great. And I didn't catch the dog actor's name, but fuck, what a cute dog.
He's so
nailed what it needed to do. And every time a movie cuts to an animal and it kind of cocks its head, or cuts to any animal, but dogs mostly, and it kind of cocks its head, so often that seems corny. But in this movie, I really was feeling like the soulful, like this dog gives a good performance. In this film.
Just watching the robot move around, the dog's just like, what is this little piece of trash? You really dislike this robot for a large chunk of the movie, and it came across so, it's a protective energy that I really enjoyed. And anybody that's had a dog that's like that, I had a dog that was just didn't like women. It's like anytime a woman would come into the house, it's like, I'm gonna destroy this woman for messing with my guy. It was very weird. It was like anytime, anybody would come towards me, my dog would get in front of me and just be like, that's not happening. No hugs, no nothing.
Yeah.
So seeing this dog have that same energy was it was pretty adorable, man.
Yeah, I think that the robot stuff, like the character of Jeff, who Caleb Landry Jones voices.
Yeah.
I feel like when that moment happens in the movie, where he quote unquote comes to life in a way, just like you mentioned it, John, a bit like Tom Hanks's performance in that scene, like where he's like getting him to mimic him and he's like nodding, stop nodding, and like he's listening and it's working. Like you just know the history of the effort that this man has made to have this companion for his dog, because he knows like he is at that point where he could be gone any day, sort of kind of thing. And like just the relief and like success that he feels. It's just a great scene. And like the bookend to that for me is, there's no spoilers in this conversation. It's the movie is available now. Go watch it. But I mean, it's basically that scene works so well for me because there's a moment later in the movie where Jeff has kind of progressed so much that like the character Finch says, like I forget what he says number wise. Like he's like, wow, like I wish I could be here to see you in 10 years or something like that. Like that moment to me, like that gives me a little bit of cold chills right now, just saying, that this thing that this inventor created, this AI, this robot, to service the other thing that he cares about most while he's still here, it's like organic, like it's becoming this thing that like he can't even predict what it's capable of from one day to the next. And that was like a really, really charming scene. But yeah, I don't know. I this is probably one of the surprise movies for me of the last, I don't know, probably for the year. I'll be honest with you, because I mean, I knew about this movie for a while, and like the whole time the log line had me, but then it kind of went and came and went and changed titles, changed distributor. I was like, wow, where is that movie?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when we were talking about it last week and it was like, wow, it's coming out next week on Apple. Like, what the hell? Like, no one's going to find this movie. I hope you do. It's called Finch. It's available now, Apple TV Plus. Sign up for a trial. What if you don't have it? If you're interested to try it out, even. We've talked a lot about some great programming on Apple TV Plus across the board, whether it's movies or TV. But, you know, some of the stuff that they've gotten through the pandemic that have gone straight to their platform have just been kind of okay. Not really that bad. Like even Tom Hanks' other movie Greyhound, I thought it was okay. But I really truly loved Finch, and I think you know it's one of the surprise movies this year for me. That if you like Tom Hanks, if you like dogs, if you want to go on a road trip with Tom Hanks trying to make a friend for his dog because he's dying, like get the Kleenexes, but come along for some fun. It was great. It was great.
Oh man. Great movie. I was trying so hard not to bawl. I was like, oh.
Ronald, I was doing the same thing. I kind of thought I was gonna cry any moment, and then when I didn't, and then there was a point where I was like, well, there was one part that whether my attention got pulled away or something, and I was like, I'm gonna go back and watch that moment where I walked away for a second, and I rewound about 15 minutes, and so I ended up watching like the last 20 minutes of the movie again. And then I was like, you know, it's funny that I didn't cry when I was watching this movie. And the second I thought that, it was like, it was as though I had been holding it in, and then like I got home. You know that feeling of like when you've had like, and it's like, but it was towards the end when some of the major stuff is happening that it really hit me. But I think it was what you were talking about, Steve. It was that sense of awareness of what carries on after you. And I think as a parent, it's that whole thing about being a parent. You're not, not to be corny, but one time someone said, who would you like to meet and spend a couple of hours talking to if you could pick anybody? And I was like, it just came to me right away. I was like, my son is an old man. I would love to know. Honestly, wouldn't it be great to know what that person is like? You know, you don't get to. Most people don't get to. Yeah. But it's and also the notion of not being there for someone when they need you is a weird, painful thought. And like the idea that I'm going to set you up with everything I can, and this goes for the dog and the robot. I'm going to set you up with everything I can so that on that day where you do need me, you realize I've already given you what you need. You know, that's extremely powerful. And in this movie, it just makes you feel that without it being. It's not unmotivated. It's like it's totally, like you said, it's a totally organic, character-driven story that gets at all this big stuff. So yeah, lovely movie.
Definitely, man.
Cool, man. Anything else you guys want to mention before we wrap it up and hang out and call it quits here? No. It's a lot, right? So we got Netflix. You got The Harder They Fall, and I mentioned Army of Thieves. John mentioned. And Ronald mentioned Paranormal Activity, Next of Kin on Paramount Plus. Not so great of things to say about it. We got the beta test in theaters and on video on demand. We all were really into that, and especially Finch, Apple TV Plus. If you can seek that out, I think that's probably the one that we would probably press the hardest for you to check out this weekend. Well, Ronald, you love The Harder They Fall. I can't wait to see that myself. But I have a feeling that's going to be one that we talk about a lot more once we've all seen it. But so maybe we can talk about that more next week, and maybe talk about Eternals as well. And that'll be probably a great conversation. Yeah. Movie.com is the website. You can find all the podcast platforms. You can subscribe to us through there. And like I said at the top of the show, youtube.com/movie if you want to subscribe to the video feed that we do for every podcast episode now. It's a bonus. You get to watch what we're talking, how we're talking, how much I use my hands. And every time I raise my hand, Zoom is telling me that I'm raising my hand, and I'm not. I just talk with my hands.
We all do, Steve.
Yeah, it's like weird. Like every time I do this, Zoom's like, you're raising your hand. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just talking. You can see that. And you could probably see my eye go to the bottom of the screen every time I do it to like to shy it off. But yeah, the YouTube's great. It's slowly growing. Ronald's doing an amazing job cutting those videos together for
Woo,
us.
Ronald.
Woohoo. So show some love, go subscribe to that and all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.com/movie schmovie. If you want to follow us there, we kind of throw some, little tidbits up there every once in a while. Ron likes to throw polls on Twitter. So follow that there as well. And again, we'll be back next week with a new episode. Definitely, hopefully, maybe someone will be able to see the Eternals, one of us, hopefully. And we'll mention that in some respect. But until then, we'll see you. Hope you have a great weekend. Watch Finch. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.